Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's dive into a wild story about what happens when a new neighbor encounters Melinda, the self-appointed queen of a tradition that no one else seems to care about. From forced party demands to kicked plants and sabotaged hot dogs, this tale of neighborhood chaos proves that some people will create drama out of absolutely nothing. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Refused to host a fake tradition party. Now my neighbor has a vendetta against me. I, 25-year-old female, recently moved into a new neighborhood a few weeks ago. It's been a peaceful area and most of the neighbors have been friendly and welcoming. A couple of them even stopped by to introduce themselves and made me feel at home, which I appreciated since I'm new to the town. That said, the neighborhood has been lively lately because of various celebrations. One neighbor's daughter just graduated, and with the holidays coming up, it's no surprise that parties have been frequent. I attended a few gatherings to get to know everyone better, and at one of these parties I met Melinda. She stood out from the other neighbors for all the wrong reasons. But I didn't realize that at first. The tradition incident. While chatting at the party, Melinda introduced herself and brought up something she called the new neighbor party. Apparently, it's a tradition in the neighborhood where the newest residents expected to host a grand party to welcome themselves and show off their home. According to Melinda, this is a big deal, and it was my duty to organize one. At first, I thought she was joking. It sounded absurd. But Melinda was dead serious. She told me I had 2 weeks to plan it and seemed visibly annoyed when I laughed it off. I told her I wasn't comfortable hosting a party since I just moved in and didn't feel ready to entertain a crowd of strangers. She stormed off, clearly offended, but I didn't think much of it. Fast forward to the day the tradition party was supposed to happen, according to Melinda. She showed up at my house with a couple of other neighbors knocking on my door and ringing my doorbell like crazy. I ignored them and spent the evening binge-watching TV shows. The next day, Melinda confronted me, furious that I didn't follow through with the tradition. She accused me of being a bad neighbor and not respecting the neighborhood's family-like spirit. Most of them either laughed it off or said they'd vaguely heard of it, but no one seemed to think it was a real thing. Still, a few of the neighbors who were with Melinda told me I should have just gone along with it to make a good impression. I stood my ground, telling them I wasn't comfortable throwing a party and wouldn't be forced into something like this. I thought that was the end of it, but Melinda wasn't done. A couple of days later, I came home to find her ringing my doorbell and knocking like a lunatic. When I asked her what she wanted, she demanded an apology for going around the neighborhood and spreading lies about the tradition. I told her to get off my property and leave me alone. As I went inside, I heard a crash. When I checked a few minutes later, I saw that she'd kicked over one of my plants. Who kicks a plant out of rage? This was turning into a personal vendetta over a party. Now let's talk about the latest incident. Today's a holiday, and the neighborhood organized a big block party. I decided to join in and contribute, so I brought hot dogs, burgers, and snacks. I labeled everything so people would know what I brought. Things were going well until I saw Melinda at my table of food rummaging through my stuff. What really ticked me off was that there were already plenty of hot dogs and burgers being cooked by other neighbors, but for some reason she skipped everyone else's contributions to mess with mine. When I confronted her, she went on a tirade about how I'd brought the wrong brand of hot dogs. They were Sabret, which is a solid choice, thank you very much. Before I could respond, she stormed off. Luckily, a kind neighbor noticed and offered to store my food in her freezer until it was needed. I'm writing this update from her house because I needed a moment to calm down. Honestly, this whole situation feels like something out of a bad sitcom. Melinda has turned a simple housewarming party into some weird power struggle, and I'm over it. Resolution, for now. I'm grateful for the neighbors who've supported me through this nonsense. One of them, John, told me that most people just tolerate Melinda to avoid drama. He reassured me that I wasn't doing anything wrong and advised me to ignore her as much as possible. Since Melinda's behavior has me on edge, between kicking plants, yelling at me in public, and now sabotaging my food at the block party, it's clear she has some sort of vendetta against me. If she keeps this up, I might have to involve the HOA or even the authorities, because her actions are borderline harassment at this point. Who knew moving into a new neighborhood could come with so much unnecessary drama? Look, I love a neighborhood with a good, friendly community. It really helps make the world a better place when people are kind to each other and help out. But some people, like Melinda, take it way too far. A person should host a party and open their home because they want to, not because they've been voluntold to do so. And our second story. By the book. 20 plus years ago, I was working at a commissary, think grocery store, on an army post. I worked in the produce department, and one of our duties was to make fruit and vegetable trays for customers one order. I started out making them pretty much like everyone else. Celery in this spot, cherry tomatoes here, broccoli like so. One day, an officer's wife asked if I could make a vegetable tray, but she wanted it a bit fancier. I love to cook and wow people with my knife skills. I sliced things thin and layered them, and pretty soon I had something that looked like it belonged on a wedding buffet. Of course, other people saw it and wanted something similar, so I became the veggie and fruit tray guy. My supervisor and I didn't get along very well. I'd stop what I was doing and take a customer to the products they were trying to find, or I'd go and search if I didn't know where exactly, especially after a reset. For some reason, my supervisor didn't like it. She didn't see it as going above and beyond. She saw it as abandoning my duties. Anyways, one day she told me that I couldn't make the trays anymore unless I followed the book which she handed me. No more fancy trays because it took too long. It took me the same amount of time as anyone else making a regular tray. I cracked open the book on my break and smiled. You want by the book, you get by the book. The next tray I made took 4 hours. My boss almost went berserk. I told her that with each individual fruit or vegetable, I had to wash, sanitize, and rinse them separately because that was what the book says. And with 8 different fruits or vegetables, I had to spend about half an hour filling and draining the sink each time as to not cause cross-contamination. I transferred to a different section shortly after that. I would have loved to see the wife of command or flag rank go to get the new normal only to be informed he was no longer allowed. See how long that supervisor lasts. And our last story. My neighbors repainted my house without permission, then sued me for the cost. I lived on a corner lot, and my house has been painted a cheerful yellow ever since it was built. I love it. And frankly, it adds some much-needed brightness to the neighborhood. 2 years ago, a newlywed couple moved into the house next to mine, and from day one, they made their mission in life crystal clear. They hated my yellow house. At first, it was just passive-aggressive comments like, "Oh, yellow's such an unusual choice. Don't you think something more neutral would be better?" That quickly escalated to outright demands that I repaint my house. When I politely refused, they called the police and the city on me. Both told them to shove it because I wasn't breaking any laws. Undeterred, they tried suing me to force a color change. That was thrown out of court, and they were even ordered to pay my legal fees. They then tried rallying the neighborhood to form a homeowners association in the hopes of regulating house colors. The neighborhood collectively told them to go pound sand. So now they're alienated from everyone, and you'd think they'd take the hint and move on, right? Nope. A couple of weeks ago, I had to go out of town for 2 weeks. My wonderful neighbors offered to collect my mail while I was gone. When I returned, I almost drove past my house because, get this, it was no longer yellow. It was gray. Someone had repainted my house. I immediately knew who was behind it and marched over to their house, ready to confront them. Of course, they didn't answer the door. Classic. That's when my across-the-street neighbor came to my rescue. He showed me pictures he took of the painting company setting up and doing the work. Apparently, he and another neighborhood called the police as soon as they saw what was happening. But here's the kicker. The painting company had a valid work order, had been paid, and was acting in good faith. So legally, the police couldn't stop them. The neighbor also told me the painters said the work order was made by a Miss Jane Smith. obviously fake, paid for in cash, and the description matched my 2 red-headed next-door neighbors. The painters were even given pictures of my house to ensure they got the job right. I also have security cameras on my property because I work shifts and live alone. I checked the footage, and sure enough, my neighbors never stepped onto my property during the entire process. They didn't physically paint the house themselves, so they technically didn't trespass or vandalize it. And since the painters did a proper job, there was no damage to the property, just an unwanted makeover. Still fuming, I called the police. They confirmed the legal gray area. The painters acted in good faith, there was no vandalism or trespassing, and no physical harm was done to the property. Essentially, the neighbors had exploited a loophole. But just when I thought this couldn't get any crazier, things escalated. I found out my neighbors had filed a lawsuit against me to recover the cost of the painters. Yes, you read that right. They want me to pay for the crime they committed. It's like they're living in an alternate reality where they're the victims. Naturally, I called my lawyer, the same one who helped me win the last lawsuit against them, and filled him in on everything. His reaction? Equal parts disbelief and exasperation. On his advice, I can't share all the juicy details just yet, but let's just say the neighbors have essentially incriminated themselves by filing this new lawsuit. Their legal filings clearly outline their involvement in hiring the painters and paying for the work. They've handed us the proof we needed on a silver platter. The best part? Everyone in the neighborhood knows what they did. The same neighbors who refused to join their imaginary HOA are now rallying behind me, offering to testify if needed. One neighbor even joked they hated the yellow so much they painted a target on their own backs. This saga isn't over yet, but I'm feeling good about my chances of getting my yellow house back and making sure these two never pull a stunt like this again. Stay tuned because karma's about to paint them a fresh coat of justice. Update. After weeks of legal back and forth, the court proceedings have finally come to an end, and the verdict was exactly what I'd been hoping for. The judge not only ruled in my favor, but handed down a hefty fine to my nightmare neighbors for their absurd behavior. As a result, they've been ordered to pay full reimbursement for the cost of repainting my house back to yellow, already scheduled, thank goodness, a fine of $25,000 for emotional damages and malicious intent, my legal fees again, and trust me, this time they were even higher. They impersonated you, representing themselves as house owners, and then got someone else to trespass, even if the painters didn't know it, on your property. Then they spent money to repaint your house. It's vandalism. If I pay someone to break your window and tell them it's my window, it doesn't make it any less vandalism. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.